In 2022, the Canadian accent was ranked as one of the best in the world. In fact, we ranked in the top 4. But my question is, which Canadian accent? Welcome to Salty Beaver Explores, and in this episode we're looking into some of the results of the survey and exploring the regional differences of the Canadian accent. In 2022, the online language tutor website Preply surveyed 2,000 Americans to determine which accents were found the most pleasant to hear, the sexiest, the most trustworthy, the smartest sounding, and the most annoying. Now, I realize this is a very small study, but the outcome is nonetheless interesting. The world has more than 7,100 languages, and in those languages, a further variety of accents and dialects. From the Preply study, the Canadian accent ranks in at number 4 of the world's best accents. As you can see, the British accent came in tops, with Australian second and French third. But hold up, Canada has 2 official languages, with French being one of them. It's spoken mainly in Quebec, but other provinces as well. The spoken Québécois French is quite different to Parisian French. Our Canadian French is based on the language spoken in Paris during the 17th and 18th centuries, during the time of the French colonization of Canada. Quebec was then isolated, and the language did not evolve the same as the language spoken in France. So, does this survey actually give Canada 2 ratings, 3rd and 4th? Canadians with a French accent and English-speaking Canadians? I believe this is actually a flaw in the survey, as 29 countries speak French as an official language, but the survey doesn't identify which French accent, as opposed to British being identified as the type of English-speaking accent. But even this is flawed, as there are approximately 40 different dialects in the United Kingdom. But let's continue. Ooh la la, an accent can be a major factor in attracting the attention of a potential romantic interest. 90% of the survey's respondents said an accent can impact how attractive they find someone. Canadians must be pretty hot, as we are again 4th in the world overall when it comes to sexy accents. American men rate us ahead of German, Italian, and Irish accents, but American women don't seem to like our Canadian accent as much. Canadians rate high on the trustworthy score, coming in 2nd behind the British accent. Accents figure heavily on how trustworthy someone appears. 68% of the respondents reported that a person's accent has changed how trustworthy they found that person to be. 38% said a Canadian accent was trustworthy, with 15% saying it would make someone seem more trustworthy. Trustworthiness and smartness seem to go hand in hand. The Canadian accent came in 3rd in this category, scoring 2% behind the French. 27% of respondents said that those who speak with a Canadian accent sound smarter. Interestingly, 53% said they assumed someone was intelligent based on a person's accent. Again, this was a small study which I just found interesting, and I realize all languages have various accents and dialects within a country. I will link the website in the description box below in case you want to read the study for yourself. As mentioned at the beginning, I wonder which Canadian accent they are referring to in the survey. Canada is the world's 2nd largest country, covering over 9.985 million kilometers squared. It's huge, so one can't imagine we all speak the same accent or have the same words for things. Here's a quick map comparison of the province of Ontario over a map of Europe to give you some context. That is only 1 province, and we have 11 provinces and 3 territories. The British also colonized Canada, imparting their 18th century accent to the country. The English language morphed and changed over time. People who live in Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa sound much more British than we do, and that is because those countries were colonized much later than Canada. The way Canadians speak can be broken down regionally, though be aware that even in these regions there are many other accents and dialects to be found. The Northern Canadian dialect is spoken by the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada. It was first developed from contact between Indigenous languages and English in remote communities. It is found predominantly in the Northern Territories of the country.
We started digging up the walrus meat. I drove around a perimeter of about 2 kilometers, and there were no fresh tracks, so we thought it was safe. But halfway into the process, I heard heavy breath, teeth clashing, gravel, and then I looked there, right from the edge of the snowmobile. A polar bear seems to be surfacing from the ground, and it's
Cape Breton is an island belonging to the province of Nova Scotia. Due to its isolation from the mainland, it had its own dialect, Cape Breton English, and it's heavily influenced by its Highland Scottish and Irish settlers. Characteristics of this dialect include a TH sound when pronouncing the S, and a shortened A sound.
He was cut off by his own voluntary retirement because some of them worked in the coal mine under those conditions. They were 73 years old. Well, all right. Did the coal company leave any pensions? No. In 1923, they gave a sort of a pension. You know what the pension was? Some of the miners got $10.
Lunenburg English is a dialect spoken in Nova Scotia's town of Lunenburg and Lunenburg County, heavily influenced by the German settlers of the region. Its distinct pronunciation consists of dropped R's, W's pronounced as a V sound, D sounds in place of the TH, and if a T is at the end of the word, it is usually silent. For example, get becomes ge. This is, unfortunately, a dying dialect.
I'm Ivan Landell. I'm 93 years old. I went to school in Blockhouse for 3 years. 2 years, a little over 2 years, I guess it was. How many? Well, I don't know how many was upstairs, but there was 54 in the room downstairs where I was in. 16, 17 days, I think, in the 7th grade.
Newfoundland English is spoken in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland is an island geographically isolated from Canada, and it didn't become a province until 1949. Because of this, they retained a distinct way of speaking and a unique language not found in other parts of Canada. They have a pronounced dialect, language, and speech pattern which was shaped by immigrants from southwestern England and southeastern Ireland.
Well, listen, my love, you're going to have to calm down. I can't understand a word you're saying. You had a break in. And they're still kicking around, are they? And where are you at in your house now? Underneath the bed. And that's a bad move on your part, so that's the first place we're going to look. Oh, yeah. And where are they at? In the kitchen. Well, maybe they're cooking you a bit of supper. Well, listen, you're going to have to stay where you're at now till we comes where you're to.
Besides Newfoundland and Labrador, the other maritime provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island have accents that sound like Scottish English in some areas and Irish English in others. Dialects can vary markedly from community to community, and up until the 1980s, people in Nova Scotia were even able to identify themselves by the distinct accent and dialect of their village. Quebec English encompasses the predominantly French-speaking province of Quebec. As discussed earlier, the French accent differs to a Parisian accent as it sounds harsher and that it pronounces the th, the sound as a d instead of a z sound. There are also native English speakers, particularly around Montreal, who tend to speak a standard Canadian English. The standard Canadian English will also be discussed later in the episode. Ottawa Valley English is spoken from northwest Montreal through Ottawa along the Ottawa River and north of Algonquin Park. It's commonly referred to as the Ottawa Valley brogue or twang. It has a Scottish, Irish, and American Loyalist influence, and these cultures have left a distinct dialect with words and phrases not found in other areas of Canada. For example, they say for two instead of just to, as in, I'm going to the store for to buy some shoes. They tend to have trouble saying words with the R sound, such as garbage or farm.
Okay, so I can't talk the right way according to Zach, so these are words how he says them, and then how I say them, and then I'm going to try to say them like him. Okay.
Farm.
Firm.
Garage.
Garage.
Barn.
Burn.
Standard Canadian English is largely spoken throughout the provinces of British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. It is defined by the low back merger in which the speakers do not distinguish the sound between the vowels of O and AU, such as in caught or caught, or the O and OU as in bought and bought, and the same sound as in pond and pond, the O and AW. Standard Canadian English can be further broken down into Inland English for the prairie provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, which have rounded O sounds from their Slavic, Scandinavian, and German influences, and British Columbia's Pacific West Coast accent. I live in and grew up in British Columbia, so what you hear is the Canadian Pacific West Coast accent. Again, there are so many variations of spoken English in Canada, but this gives you a bit of a breakdown as to how we sound. Sadly, as the world grows smaller, many of the regional accents and dialects are disappearing. Do you have a favorite accent or favorite Canadian accent? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there are a few things you can do to help support our channel. Give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and leave a comment. Let us know if there's a Canadian story you would like us to cover in a future episode. For more content about Canada, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon to be notified of our next video upload.